In mid-April of 1989 on a Sunday I was driving back to my home from a trade show at a resort. As I drove I thought of the beautiful early spring day, the leaves beginning to show on the trees. The weather was beautiful with temperatures about 75 degrees Fahrenheit or so. I was driving northbound on the highway. On the radio was a great song and I was happy at going home after having to work the trade show that weekend. I had been asked to be a groomsman in a longtime friend's wedding that weekend, but the boss said I couldn't get off. I was disappointed at missing the wedding and not getting to see my friend, but he was never far from my mind. During the day I was thinking as I drove that my friend would be at the reception at about that time and wondered how the service went. I saw a car approaching the highway from the west on a gravel road. I saw the car cross the southbound lanes of traffic and drive through the median, approaching the stop sign that governed the traffic on that little road, to stop before continuing across the northbound lanes of traffic rather than stopping at the stop sign before driving across the northbound lanes of traffic, those in which I was driving at the time. The car continued past the stop sign directly into the path of my car, and looking back at the experience it seems strange how one's perceptions are altered under that sort of stress. My mind saw the car as a huge mid-70s Lincoln Town car, and examining the reason for this misperception I have only been able to determine that the car was so close. My mind changed it to a big model. I did however get the color correct. It was green. Everything slowed to slow motion time. I said or thought an expletive. I still believe that I said it, but considering how little time I had in this area of the experience, I think my mind was working so very fast that I just thought that I said that expletive. I recall that my right hand pulled the gear shift backward at the same time I turned the steering wheel hard left. I remember thinking, if I can just hit this car in the rear axle it will spin the car on the front axle out of my way, and maybe we, the elderly man driving the car and the elderly woman in the passenger seat who I could see, will live through this thing. My mind processed the image of them in a car spinning on its front axle, then processed the image of them in a car being struck dead center at the passenger door with my car. I remember there was no sound other than wind. I recall thinking, that's weird, where's the wind? I thought, okay, there isn't going to be any sound until the cars hit. Then I wonder why my car wasn't turning. I had turned the wheel hard left with my hand but nothing happened. I reached the point as the cars neared where I realized that there was absolutely nothing I could do to affect the outcome of this event. I was just there and it was going to happen all around me. That was the first time in my life and the last time in my life that I had come to that realization. I watched the people in the other car getting closer and closer, at first a few feet, then inches. The man was looking forward through the windshield. The woman was turned slightly toward him and I believe talking to him. She held what I thought was a small transistor radio in her right hand near her right ear. I thought, I haven't seen a radio like that since about 1971 or so. Then contact was made and the view of the other people was immediately obscured by steam from the radiator of my car bursting. I remember knowing that's what it was. My car began to spin slowly toward the west. I could not see it all because of the steam, and I remember thinking, all I need is for a tractor trailer to plow into us. With this going on, boy, I'd sure like to see that one coming. Then I reasoned that the wind was out of the west, and since my car was spinning from north to west, as soon as it had reached the point where it had spun facing southwest, that the steam would probably no longer block my vision. Sure enough, when the car spun facing the southwest, the steam was carried out of my field of view and I could see down the highway from the direction in which I had just come. I remember thinking, man, am I lucky there isn't a truck bearing down on us. Then my car stopped. Realizing that my car had stopped moving, I thought, man, I've got to get out of here. I remember my head bowing and my chin striking my chest, and then there was a big foofing sound. I was standing next to the driver's door of my car. I looked at the guy sitting there and thought, hey, that's me and I'm sort of a mess. Not too bad though, it doesn't look like anything was torn off the body. It all looks pretty much there, but it is dead. At this moment I heard a voice behind me and turned. There standing were two friends of mine who had been killed in a car wreck in 1983. They had been together when they were killed, and the three of us were closer than brother and sister. I went to both funerals and swore to myself that I would like to have those two gals come to collect me when I died. Well, here they were. The amazing thing was that I wasn't surprised in the least to see them there. I remember saying, hey Lisa, hey Susan, in a nonchalant manner, as though I had just met them in the student union. After a break in classes I began to tell Lisa about my body. I said hey Lisa, get a load of this, sort of amused about the situation, and sort of nodded toward myself seated in the car. I remember a feeling of total and utter freedom. There really aren't words to describe this feeling, but it was occurring to me that I could do anything I wanted in my current state. I could go anywhere and no laws of physics dictated what I could do. I realized I could even go to the Eiffel Tower if I wanted. I began to revel in my current feeling, a feeling of such well-being that even now I miss it. Lisa said. Brian, you must listen closely. Lisa continued. You must look, and pointed to the western horizon. I noticed that pretty much the world was muted like a television that isn't getting good reception, and occasionally the black and white is broken by a blob of color, but pretty much it's black and white. In the sky, however, was my life. It was like seeing it on a movie screen in color on a video cassette recorder that stuck in fast forward, but rather than seeing it only, I was feeling it like I was in life and standing with Lisa and Susan at the same time. Life played literally from my birth to my death. At the end of this life screen event, I was not left with anyone telling me you sinned, you're a sinner, you did this and this and this that was bad and against the 10 Commandments. Rather, I was left to form an opinion of life, not so much in terms of I was a bad person, good person, but rather that was a good life, as objectively as though I was commenting on a special meal or the completion of a project just completed that pleased me exceptionally. I knew at that particular moment that there had been other lives when they were completed. I had gone through identical or similar reviews, but was not curious about these other lives since they were done. I had completed them, leaving them of no further consequence. I knew that this life would be of no consequence. Now that it was done, I realized that I knew everything. There were no questions. All knowledge was instantly present in my thoughts. I knew that this was my actual state of being. I was a creature, as I now found myself, who had for some time used the lifeless piece of meat inside the car. None of this seemed to take long. In our time, a period of about 20 seconds or so, all this occurred to me, was thought of and happened in that amount of time. Lisa said, or rather communicated, you must listen. You have accomplished enough that you can go with us or you can stay, but if you stay we have to know why and you have to tell us. You must know this. If you stay it's going to be very, very hard. I said flatly, I have to stay. Lisa asked why. I stated I don't have any children yet. I was aware that Susan had said nothing during this, only Lisa. I noticed that beyond Susan there was someone else. I realized that this person was listening intently and that I was not allowed to see him or her. This person appeared only as a huge presence that was perceivable only as waves of distortion shielded from my consciousness so that I could not see him or her directly. Lisa said, alright, you have to know that your heart stopped when you hit the steering wheel, but you will not have permanent injury from this. Your injuries will be a broken sternum, a cut on your finger, and you'll lose a couple of teeth. I said okay and heard poof. Everything was black and I was at first confused. I couldn't figure out where exactly I was. Then I heard a sound like a far-off boom. There was then silence and then another boom, then another, closer together. Then I heard a heartbeat sound and another, and realized that the booming was my heart starting. I remember thinking that's my heart starting. Then the realization hit me that I needed a breath of air badly. I took the longest, deepest gasping breath that I can ever recall taking. When it was finished I opened my eyes and observed the scene and saw my hand begin to bleed. I shall not repeat all the particulars of the accident, however I kept lapsing into and out of consciousness many times. I could hear people talking but couldn't seem to react. At least 3 times that I recall people felt my neck and said, this one's gone. When I finally raised my head and made a statement to a state trooper who was bent over at the driver's door of my car copying my VIN number off my dash, he leaped back and yelled, hey, this one's alive, get over here. I remember an emergency medical technician in my car and vibration from extraction equipment. I remember a television camera and stating, get that bleeping camera out of my face. I remember being in an ambulance and a woman emergency medical technician sitting on a bench next to me. I remember asking her, where exactly are we? She said, you're in an ambulance. I said, no, where exactly on the road are we? How far from the city? She said, I'm afraid I have no way of knowing. There's only a little window. I remember saying, that's all right, I'll go out and look. I recall passing through the side of the ambulance and seeing a rock quarry that I always used as a landmark, and noting that we were almost to it, I went back through the side of the ambulance and told her, we're almost to the rock quarry. Good, we're getting close. The emergency medical technician got up, went to a small window on the side of the ambulance and said, oh, I see it. Yes, but how? She didn't finish that sentence, nor did she say anything else other than, you just lay quiet, we're almost there. When she sat back down later in the emergency room, the emergency medical technician from inside the car came and said, you look much better than you did a while ago. I told him I felt better, he said. In all the years I've been doing this, I've never checked anyone and been mistaken about them being living or dead until now. I told him, who says you were mistaken? He had appeared concerned, but now he grinned and said, you be cool, man, and left. A nurse asked me if I had a background in the medical profession, as I had told people at the scene and in the emergency room that I had a broken sternum, a cut on my finger, and that I would lose 2 teeth. I told her that I was not in the medical profession. I recovered from my broken sternum and the cut on my hand and had to get a couple of root canals done on my teeth.